Does pretty privilege apply to men? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I want to talk a little bit about male attractiveness and whether the concept of like pretty privilege applies to men as much as it applies to women. I have a couple other videos talking about pretty privilege when it comes to women. I'll probably talk a little bit about that in this video, but I was seeing a lot of content online kind of talking about attractiveness as it applies to men and their situation with dating. One of the problems with a video like this, I feel like, is because my primary audience is women, and a lot of this stuff is going to be a little bit more advice for men, and I know most men are not going to actually take advice from a woman. I'm aware of that. I used to work with mostly men, so I understand that like most men will take this stuff much more coming from a man than they would a woman. But you know what? If there are women watching this and you agree with what I have to say, you know, like, engage with the content, leave a comment. Maybe this will get boosted in the algorithm so more men might actually hear this and they might actually take some advice from a woman. Who knows? Anything's possible, right? So the first topic that I noticed people talking about was men and dad bods. And I've seen this online before, and I do agree with the irony that we kind of put like dad bods on kind of a bit of a pedestal, and we shame mom bods when it's like, in order for people to become a dad and a mom, the woman's body literally has to change. Whereas the man's body doesn't actually have to change at all, but yet we shame mom bods, but we celebrate dad bods. Here's the thing though, there is a big misunderstanding. It's interesting because I hear a lot of people talk about like when it comes to women, like guy pretty and girl pretty, you know, so like there are women out there who, you know, whether it's the way they dress or the way they look or whatever, it's like it's girl pretty. Like girls are gonna be like, oh my god girl, you're so gorgeous, that kind of thing. Whereas for men, they tend to look at a woman who has more of like a natural sexuality. That's going to be more what like men are going to perceive as pretty. And like there's a little bit different, which I think makes a certain amount of sense, because at the end of the day, when, you know, men and women are looking at a woman, generally speaking, if we're talking about heterosexual people, they're looking at a woman differently. You know what I mean? For different purposes. Men are looking at her more from a, you know, a mating perspective, whereas, you know, straight women would be looking at her more as to like, you know, is she someone I'd have someone in common with, or is she someone I'd look to for inspiration or something like that? So like, I think that stuff makes a certain amount of sense, right? However, I think there's a similar thing that goes on with men. I want to say like the fitness world, because I see a lot of guys who are like super like lean, buff, like real like muscle, like gym bros. Not all of them, mind you, but there's a whole message there that's like trying to convince men that women don't like dad bods, or you know, that women will never want you if you're not like in perfect shape or something like that, which probably a lot of them are doing because they're pushing a business or an agenda or something. Maybe they're just trying to justify their time they're spending in the gym, or maybe they're trying to be perceived as an expert so they can sell you a fitness product or something like that. Like there probably is an agenda going on there. But what they don't realize is that, and I actually saw like a study at one point that showed a whole bunch of different male physiques and like which ones that women were the most attracted to. The ones that women were the most drawn to were not like the extremely out of shape or the extremely in shape look. But generally speaking, they were men that looked like they had some kind of like physical ability, but weren't like overly muscular or like overly lean or cut type of thing. I used to actually spend a lot of time like obsessing over fitness content, which actually got me into an eating disorder, which is a whole other conversation I won't get into. But when I used to be very, very deeply into fitness content, I remember a lot of discussions between like men and women in the fitness industry when it came to like men who were actually like fitness competitors, like men who were actually doing fitness competitions and stuff, that when they would ask their like wives and girlfriends or something, like when the woman liked their physique the most, it was typically when they were in a bulk. So like these guys had a lot of muscle, they had a lot of strength, but they also had like a little bit of body fat that covered those muscles, so they weren't like at their leanest. That makes a certain amount of sense, because for one thing, this is extreme for women, but it also can happen for men, is when you get yourself into too low a body fat, it actually starts messing with your hormone levels. For women, it's very dramatic, but like for men, like if you drop too much body fat, so you end up in that extreme lean state that many men get into for fitness competitions or even like for photo shoots or things like that, it actually can drop your energy level, it can drop your libido. We're naturally going to be less attracted to people that have an imbalance in their hormones. Like it's part of us, it's part of our pheromones, it's part of what makes us attracted to each other. It makes a certain amount of sense that men that get to this like extreme lean level, for these fitness competitions are not going to be seen as sexually desirable, because it probably has thrown off their hormones to some extent. So again, the dad bod phenomenon, it's not necessarily that women are like more attracted to men who are like completely out of shape. It tends to be that women are more attracted to men who have a certain amount of like strength and physical ability, but aren't necessarily like as lean and cut. And they actually have done studies that show it's similar to like the guy pretty or the girl pretty in women. They've done studies that show that what men considered to be like a sign of physical fitness in men is actually much more extreme than what women see as physical fitness in men. So like men's standards for judging a man's physical ability are much more extreme than a woman's standards for judging a man's like physical ability. So there is something to the fact that women are just not as obsessed with a man having the highest level of physical endurance or physical ability as men are when they're judging other men. And the concept of dad bods, well, I don't think that it necessarily means that women are attracted to a guy who just looks like he's just like a complete couch potato or something. There is something to the fact that women's standards when it comes to a man having signs of physical strength and ability are just not the same as when it comes to what men are judging. So when I see men that are like, women don't really like dad bods, they're just saying that. Or the crazy one is when you hear guys say things like, oh, women say they like dad bods because like women want to stay out of shape, so they don't want a guy who's too in shape, which women's brains don't think like that. Like we just don't. Like the average woman is not thinking that at all. I'm not saying there aren't women out there that do think like that, but that's not common. There are a lot of women who see guys who look like they spend all of their time in the gym and associate that with a man who's not going to have time to dedicate to other things. I actually used to have a comedy bit back when I did stand-up where I talked about it. I won't go into the bit because it would be weird out of context, but like the gist of it was that like I didn't need a guy who was like so physically fit, because like if a guy's spending all of his time in his abs, there's other areas of his life that are not getting enough attention, which is true. I mean, at the end of the day, like it's not necessarily that having a six-pack is a good or a bad thing for a man, but if a man looks like he's spending all of his time in the gym, I mean, unless that's actually his job, then that dedication to his time in the gym is probably going to take his focus away from other things, whether it be his relationship or whether it be his work. I mean, again, unless the gym is his work. You know, women are going to take those things into consideration when they're actually looking at a guy. And also, and I mentioned this actually in my video about masculine and feminine myths in fitness, which I think is a lot of useful information for both men and women in this, talking about approaching fitness from a masculine mindset or from a feminine mindset. When men take selfies, like fitness selfies of themselves, that's very feminine energy. Not telling men not to do it, totally your decision. If you want to do it, that's fine. But like the act of taking those like physique selfies is a very feminine energy thing to do. So like women who are naturally in their feminine energy are not going to be physically attracted to men taking gym selfies. Actually, when I originally posted that video, I had a ton of women who are actually like in the fitness industry who backed that up. We're like, yes, as women, we don't find that sexy. Now, that's your job as a man because you're in the fitness industry, or maybe you just want to track your progress and you want to post fitness selfies. By all means do that. I'm not telling you that you need to change your life just to attract a partner or something like that. Like if that's what you do and you happen to be in your feminine energy, for the rest of your life you're embodying your masculine energy or whatever, you can still attract a partner. Like I'm not saying that taking those selfies is going to eliminate your chances of being in a healthy relationship by any means. However, you have to understand that a lot of that, like the vanity muscles and the taking the selfies and the posing and things like that, that's very feminine energy. So a feminine woman is not going to be as attracted to a man who's embodying that kind of feminine energy. Whereas I actually remember back when I posted that video, this was a long time ago, there was a guy who was talking about how he was posting a lot of videos of himself. He was doing something, some kind of a sports activity, gaining strength and actually showing his progress. I don't remember what activity it was. It was just so long ago. I was like, that's different, because when you're actually talking about a man who is gaining muscle and gaining strength because he's actually like doing tasks, like maybe he has a very muscular job or something like that, like that's embodying much more masculine energy than something like vanity muscles. And again, I'm not saying anything's right or wrong. Like if you get vanity muscles in the gym and you want to do that, more power to you. If you work a physical labor job and you're getting stronger that way, more power to you. Like this is not a right or wrong thing. I'm just kind of pointing out that there are differences in that energetically. So to sum it up, the concept of women being attracted to dad bods is not that women are more attracted to men that look like they don't have any athletic ability or their physical strength or anything like that. It's just usually more about women being more attracted to men that have a certain level of physical fitness but don't have it to the extreme where they look like they're spending all of their time and energy just getting to this certain physique in the gym or getting to a certain level of leanness. Women tend to be more attracted to guys that have a thickness about them, right? So again, it's not about a guy being completely out of shape or like never working out, or in fact, men who tend to be more sedentary so that they end up either getting very overweight or, you know, or just don't have any kind of muscle tone whatsoever. Some of those things tend to be a little less appealing because, you know, as humans, we're meant to be very active. Now, if you have a woman who's very inactive, she might pair well with a guy who's also very inactive, which has more to do with things like common interests and lifestyle and stuff like that. I realize a lot of people are probably going to come for me and be like, what right do you have to talk about fitness? And I talked about this a little bit more in my video where I talked about masculine, feminine energies and fitness. I've always been a very active person. I've had issues with diet and food, and I've had weight fluctuations a lot throughout the course of my life. I've been bigger, I've been smaller. A lot of it has had to do with a lot of different factors, but I have always been a very physically active person. I've been involved in dance. I was a group certified fitness trainer. I was certified to teach Zumba, taught dance classes over the years. Like, I've always been a very active person. Even at my heaviest weight, even when I have been at my most overweight, I've always been active, sometimes more active than other times in my life, but I've always been a very active person. However, even at my leanest, even at my fittest, I never looked like a fitness model. A lot of that has to do with genetics, just simply how I'm built, which is, I can accept that. For me, when I'm looking at a guy who I'm dating, I'm less interested in what does his physique look like, and I'm more interested in does his lifestyle match mine. So I cook all my own meals. I don't eat processed foods. I try to cook very clean and healthy. I'm very active. I prioritize physical activity in my life. I also know that doing those things does not make me look like a fitness model. So if I meet a guy, does he eat a lot of processed foods or doesn't he? You know, is he somebody who's gonna be like, I don't wanna eat organic because it's too expensive or something? Like, does he not prioritize healthy foods? What is his activity level? Is he very sedentary? Things like that. Like, I look at those things as opposed to his physical look. Right? So, you know, if a guy has a similar lifestyle to mine or it has similar priorities to mine, but yet he doesn't have a six-pack and isn't, you know, a Mr. Universe or something like that, like, that's fine for me because I care more about the lifestyle. There are also a lot of people, and you see this with a lot of fitness influencers, who are very fit, who have a very classic physique, who do a lot of really bad things with their body. I mean, you see this with men and women. There are a lot of people that, in the name of fitness, of looking fit, will do a lot of really dangerous things with their body. That wouldn't fly with me. Like, I would not be interested in being in a relationship with a guy, no matter how, you know, physically handsome or fit he looked, who was doing really dangerous things with his body to get that look, because I prioritize health and I want to be with a guy who prioritized health, whether that made him look like a Mr. Universe or whether it didn't, because it's the lifestyle. I can say from my own personal experience, because I've dated guys from kind of all different builds and things like that. Like, I went out on a couple dates with a guy who was very obese, like dangerously obese. Because I met him, he seemed like a really sweet guy, and, you know, we went out, and as much as, you know, I do think he was a genuinely good person, and I was certainly at the time not a tiny woman by any means. We walked, I remember, from like the car into the restaurant, which was not that far a walk, and he was just so out of breath and so winded. And I just realized that I couldn't be in a relationship with someone who couldn't have the physical ability to do like everyday tasks and just basic things in life. I wish him the best. I hope he got healthy. I really do. But I've also been in relationships with guys who looked more fit, like not necessarily like fitness competitor fit, but like looked more fit, had very physically active jobs, but also I remember dating a guy one time, his cardiovascular ability was so bad that like just sitting with him, like his breathing patterns were so shallow that I was like, I couldn't handle it. Like, it was just driving me nuts, because he just, like, even though he did a lot of like physical lifting, like he had no cardio, and he was also a smoker, which again goes to health and things like that. I was young, I was dumb, I wasn't paying as much attention to this stuff when I was younger. Also, his eating habits were atrocious. And again, I was not a tiny person at that time. To be with somebody whose eating habits were so bad, I couldn't handle it because it was the lifestyle, right? Like, it's a difference in lifestyle. I mean, I would encourage anybody to take a look at your lifestyle and your priorities. And this goes for men or women. Look at your priorities. Like, where are your priorities? Where do they fall? I think from my own perspective, because even at my fittest weight, like even when I have been like, you know, probably about as lean as I was going to be able to go, I didn't have like a traditional like fit body or like a traditional like fitness body, because that's just genetically how I am. Because I always prioritize healthy food, I prioritize cooking my own food, I prioritize not eating processed foods, I always prioritize physical activity. Like, those things are very important to me. I think I've dated guys in the past who didn't look physically fit because I was like, well, I don't look physically fit doing these things, so like I don't deserve to be with a guy who's also physically fit. But there was always a barrier there because like I would date guys who, it's like they were always treating themselves. If every day is cheat day, then you just don't have a healthy lifestyle, you know what I mean? For me, it was like I didn't care if the guy looked physically fit or if he didn't, but it's just like, okay, but your lifestyle just doesn't match with my lifestyle, and that's why it just doesn't work. I would actually encourage anybody, male or female, to pay more attention to lifestyle than to actual physical appearance. I realize physical appearance isn't nothing. You want to be with somebody you're physically attracted to. I get that. But I'm always somebody who encourages people to get to like the root of what you really want. Is the root of what you really want somebody who looks a certain way? Or is the root of what you really want somebody who actually prioritizes their health? Those are two different things. Because you can look very healthy and actually be living a very unhealthy lifestyle. And you can also be somebody who doesn't necessarily look like the fitness model on the cover of the fitness magazine, but they prioritize their health, right? I will say this before I wrap up this section about like, you know, physique and dad bods and things like that. If somebody wants you to lose weight or get fit and they don't care how you get there, or they want you to fit a certain image or a certain look or look a certain way or something, and they don't care how you get to that place, they don't actually care about your health. Because there's a lot of ways that people can get to a certain look or to like look healthy or look fit that have nothing to do with actually being healthy. So if somebody is encouraging you to be healthy, that's a positive thing. It usually means they care about you. If somebody is just encouraging you to look a certain way or to fit a certain image and they don't care how you get there, they don't care about your health. That goes for men or women. We are seeing a huge increase in male body dysmorphia and things like that. I would also note though that if men are only concerned about body dysmorphia and they're only concerned with the way that the media is manipulating men or shaming men to looking a certain way or the unrealistic beauty expectations of men today, but they only care about it because like now it's affecting them and they still don't care about how it's affecting women, you might want to take a look at that, because that's been affecting women for a long time. And now that men are experiencing it, yes, as men, if you want to join women in the fight against the unrealistic beauty standards and the toxic messages as far as toxic diet culture and things like that, absolutely. I think most women would welcome men joining the fight against that stuff. But if you as a man are only concerned with it when it affects men, but you're not concerned with it when it affects women, you're probably not gonna have women be as receptive to that. Just saying. I'll go off on a tangent here when it comes to men and body dysmorphia and body image and things like that before I get into the next topic. But say for example, you as a man, you come to me and you say something like, I'm finding myself comparing myself to a lot of men in the media, a lot of men on social media, or a lot of men in movies or things like that. And it's giving me this really unrealistic expectation of what I'm supposed to look like, and I am feeling really horrible about my body or how I look, and it's giving me a lot of body dysmorphia or something like that or whatever. If you as a man come to me with that conversation, I can have a huge amount of empathy for that. I think most women can, because most women know what that experience is like, and most women can relate to that experience. But if you as a man come to me or maybe another woman or something with the attitude of like, you know, body dysmorphia and unrealistic beauty expectations in the media, it affects men just as much, if not more, than women, or something like that. As women, we're gonna get defensive, because at the end of the day, first of all, it's completely inaccurate. It's not true. The expectations on women are far greater than they are on men. Not saying that there aren't expectations on men and that it's not very toxic for a lot of men. If you feel like the only way that you can get your message across is to discredit everybody else's experience, then you need to work on your mindset. Because again, most women are gonna be able to relate to a man who is comparing himself to other men or is having these unrealistic body expectations put on them, because women know what that experience is like. But if you as a man have to discredit every other woman's experience with that in order to make your experience seem like it's the only one that matters, you're probably not gonna get that much empathy from people because you've literally had to tear other people down just to make your problem look more important. That was a tangent and a rant I didn't intend to go on, but there we go. Okay, so we talked about the dad bod thing and that concept. I want to talk a little bit more about like a pretty privilege aspect. I actually saw these two, they were quite young girls, talking about the concept of if a woman is not attracted to a man, she will find everything he does as creepy or find him approaching her as creepy. But if she's attracted to a man, then she'll let him get away with anything. And so it's so difficult to tell men like how they should approach women because it really just depends on how much the woman is attracted to the man. And I've heard a lot of men say this, a lot of men have complained about this, a lot of men have whined about this a lot over the years. Believe me, I've heard it all. I used to work with mostly men, so I've heard every complaint in the book. I want to give some men some advice about how to navigate this situation. I have a video actually talking about men approaching women in the gym or men checking out women in the gym or things like that that cover this topic a little bit. But here's the thing. I don't want men to sink into the victimhood when it comes to this phenomenon. First of all, as a man, if you are looking for a formula, like a formula, like an A to B to C formula about how to pick up a woman, you clearly don't understand women. Because the thing about women is we're always changing, we're always evolving. All women are so different, we don't fit into a specific category. And most women are different depending on the time of day, the time of week, the time of month, what mindset we're in. If you try approaching the same woman one way, day 1 of her menstrual cycle and day 15 of her menstrual cycle, you're probably gonna get 2 totally different women. So if you as a man are looking for like a formula of like how to pick up women, you're approaching it wrong. You need to understand women better because it doesn't work like that. I don't want men to sink into the victimization of, well, if a woman found a man attractive, he could get away with anything, but I'm all of a sudden a creep because she's not attracted to me. Think of that as a blessing. Because if a woman thinks you're a creep and expresses that what you're doing is creepy, then she's not attracted to you. So take the L and walk away. That woman is not attracted to you. Don't try to make her attracted to you, because if she's just not attracted to you, it's a blessing. Move on. What is it they say that like rejection is God's protection or something? She's just not for you. And this, I think, is one of the biggest problems, is that guys get in their ego and they think that they have to like prove that they can make this woman want him, or like these guys have this like their ego gets bruised because the woman is not into him, and then it's like they have to prove that they can win her over or something. If she's flat out rejecting you, or she's finding you creepy, or she's not, like, move on. She's just not the woman for you, and that's okay. Not everybody is going to be the woman for you. Now, if you find that women always think you're creepy, women are never positively receptive to how you approach women, it's not the woman, it's you. Like, work on yourself. Maybe dating and approaching women is just not where you are right now. Work on yourself. Work on finding confidence. Work on finding, you know, do some self-improvement or things like that. But like, if a woman is just not into you, just move on. Like, it's not a matter of like, oh, this guy did the same thing and she likes him. She's just more into him. Move on. Like, her rejecting you is just simply her saying she's not into you. It's a blessing because you don't have to pursue her anymore. You don't have to waste your time on somebody who's just not interested in you. Plain and simple. Now, when it comes to men who say that they're afraid of approaching women because they're afraid that a woman is gonna snap at them, or a woman's gonna start accusing him of sexual harassment or something like that. First of all, sexual harassment and things like that tend to be in the workplace. So if I were you, I would probably keep like workplace flirtations and stuff, or workplace interactions or things, err extremely cautiously onto the respectful side when it comes to workplace stuff. Those kind of things are probably not going to happen a ton outside the workplace. Now, there's 2 different instances where a woman is just gonna snap at you and accuse you of being creepy. Okay, I would say 3, but one of them is not that common. The third one, which isn't very common, is just if a woman is like trying to videotape it and she just wants attention and views on social media, which is not as common as you would think. I think men think it's very common that this is happening, like when you see like these gym videos of these women that are trying to like publicly humiliate guys for like looking at them in the gym, and I have a video actually talking about this. I don't think that's as common as we think that it is. It's just that those videos go viral, so we see them all the time, so we think it's a common thing. That's not that common. The two more common reasons why a woman is gonna snap at a guy because, you know, she thinks he's being creepy or because he's hitting on her or something like that. The two more common instances where that's gonna happen is that something the guy does maybe triggers something in the woman that makes her feel unsafe or uncomfortable, and that may be because he actually is acting unsafe and uncomfortable, or maybe it's just because this woman has some kind of trauma from her past that this is triggering in her, and there's really nothing that the man could do about it. It's just something that is triggering her, and he might be coming from a completely reasonably healthy place, and she's just triggered by it. I think as a man, if that does happen to you, I think it's very safe to ask yourself, like, okay, did I do anything or approach this situation in a way that would make this woman feel unsafe? And if you can honestly say no, if you can honestly, and I think a lot of men honestly are not very good at self-reflection, but if you can honestly say that, you know, you just approached this woman and you were coming from a very genuine place where you weren't trying to feel unsafe, and if you can honestly say that within yourself and she snaps at you, then maybe that's just her thing. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that's just what she has to deal with, and it might not be about you. It might just be her thing. It might be fair to ask yourself, like, how could I approach a woman in the future to not make her triggered or feel unsafe? Maybe you do need to adjust your approach to things. The most common reason, and this is the reason that's actually come up for me, and this is coming from a woman, I don't like confrontation. I don't like to stir up drama. I don't like to make a scene. I'm a recovering people pleaser. The few times in my life that I have actually like snapped at a guy that was hitting on me, it's very rare, but it has happened. And the times that it's happened have been when the guy just would not take no for an answer. No matter how like nice, pleasant, polite I tried to be, he would not take the hint. Now, I actually have a whole masterclass on masculine and feminine communication and stuff, and men and women do have different ways that they typically communicate. I will say that for men, and like ladies, we need to take this into consideration, for most men, they respond the best to direct communication, and they do not pick up on subtlety. Most men do not pick up on subtlety. They don't pick up on hints. Like, they need direct communication. That said, because men and women have to coexist in the world, and if you do want to have a heterosexual relationship, then newsflash, you're going to need to be able to communicate in both the way men communicate and the way women communicate. There's a lot of nuances to this. I go into that in my masterclass, but men are going to need to pay more attention to women giving you clues as to whether or not they are interested or uninterested. As a man, if you don't want to get to the place where women snap at you or women get so offended or start claiming that you're creepy or something, you are going to have to learn, and I realize that this is not in male nature, but if you want to deal with a woman, you're going to have to learn to do this, is you're going to have to start learning to pick up on her body language, on how she is responding to what you're saying. If what you're doing and saying is making her more closed off, if she's backing off, like typically when she's like, if she's becoming more closed off, if she's moving away from you, if she's backing off, if she's looking very uncomfortable, you are doing something wrong. You either need to redirect or you need to move on. One or the other, right? You need to pick up on women's body language, on subtleties and behavior, and I realize that for most men, that's not naturally how they operate. But if you want to communicate with a woman, you got to learn to pick up on some of that. Now, women should also learn to be more direct and to communicate more directly with men. For women, I think it's really important that you understand how men communicate so that you can better communicate with a man the way that he is the most receptive to. Men also need to learn to communicate with women the way that women respond to. You need to figure out the difference in male-female communication if you want to communicate with each other. I think in our current society, we oftentimes default to communicating the way that men respond to as like the default method, and women are just expected to conform to that. I think women should learn to communicate with men the way that men are going to respond to the best, but men also need to learn to communicate with women the way that women respond to the best. What that most frequently means is women need to learn how to be more direct with men, and men need to learn to pick up on things like body language and energetics and subtleties in behavior that women are expressing. You need a mixture of both if you want to learn how to communicate as men and women. That's just life. And again, I will tell you, as somebody who does not like to snap at people, who does not like to be mean, who does not like to fly off the handle, the few times that I have done that in the course of my life were times when men just would not take no for an answer. Like, they just would not get that I was trying to turn them down in the nicest way possible. Eventually, you just lose it and you're like, okay, dude, I can't be nice to you anymore. I'm trying to be nice and turn you down, and you just cannot get the hint, right? So again, when it comes to men approaching women, I don't want you to get into this victimization of like, well, we can't approach women because we'll all be labeled as creeps. Most men are not going to experience that. Most women are not out there looking to like snap at any guy that says something nice to them. And if a woman is just not receptive to what you're putting out there and not responding in a positive way, just move on. Just move on. Does rejection suck? Yeah. I don't want men to sit around and think like, well, men are the only ones that get rejected. Women get rejected all the time. Like, everybody in life, like, rejection is a part of the human experience. It sucks. Like, it hurts your ego. Like, we all have to deal with rejection, and we all have to figure out ways of getting through it and moving past it. Is your ego gonna like it? No. But like, at the end of the day, you move on. Because if that person rejects you, it just means they weren't for you. It's safe to look at yourself and look at your own situation and be like, okay, how could I approach that differently? If you're genuinely like, no, I couldn't have approached it any differently, then that person's just not for you. I really do think, though, that this is like more of a modern man phenomenon, because I think men's lives have gotten so easy. Like, men aren't required to like go to war anymore. They're not required to like build houses. They're not required to hunt for their food, or like, men's lives have gotten so easy that like, if rejection from a woman is going to destroy you, your life is too easy. Like, you need other things in your life so that a woman rejecting you is not going to completely destroy you. Because if you're that fragile as a man that one woman's rejection is going to completely throw you down a spiral, you're not ready to date. Like, you need other things in your life that are fulfilling to you, because it's people who don't actually have like fulfilling lives that find that kind of rejection to be completely heartbreaking. Do men get rejected sexually more than women do? Yes, absolutely. But women get rejected in plenty of other areas in life, and men get rejected in other areas of life. Like, it's just one area of life, and we all have to experience rejection, and we all have to learn how to deal with it. It's not fun, but we all have to learn how to deal with it. I don't want guys to get into this idea or this mindset of like, well, attractive men have it so much easier than unattractive men or things like that. Like, are women gonna tend to be maybe a little bit more receptive to attractive men than they are to less attractive men? Probably. But in the long run, a man only showing up with attractiveness is only gonna take him so far. It's really not gonna get him a ton. I would actually go so far as to say in our society that attractive men don't even get as much leeway as attractive women do. And I have a video talking about pretty privilege in women and how I think it can be a double-edged sword. A man being attractive may get him a little bit more attention. People may take him more seriously. Women may be a little bit more receptive to his presence in general or things like that. But I don't actually believe that attractiveness in men even gets them as far in life as attractiveness in women. Because for men, attractiveness, while a good to have, we always expect more from men than just a good looking guy. And I actually think that men who are like just physically attractive and don't have anything else to offer eventually kind of become laughing stocks. You know what I mean? Like, they might garner some attention or things like that, but like, we take male models way less seriously than we take female models. Like, that's to say that female models can sometimes, you know, be seen as airheads or superficial or something like that, but I think that that's even more extreme for male models. Men typically need more than just good looks, and there's so many other avenues that men have to make up for not necessarily being blessed in the looks department. While being a good looking guy might get you in the door in some places, good-looking men are always gonna need something to back that up. And while I don't think that good-looking men necessarily get the airhead, brain-dead stereotype that like attractive women get, like I don't think people automatically assume that good-looking men are automatically like superficial or brain-dead or anything like that. But good-looking men are gonna need to prove their intellectual ability, their skill, their anything, like just as much as other men. So I think a man that actually just shows up with looks, it's not gonna take them very far. Because at the end of the day, like good looks are fine, but like especially if a woman is looking for a man to be a protector and provider or something like that, if a man's just a pretty boy, that's not gonna get women very far. Like he might be nice to look at, but at the end of the day, like if he can't bring something else, it's probably not gonna work. There's so many other avenues that men have to prove their worth and their value in society beyond physical appearance, that I don't think that men having physical attractiveness is really the privilege that it is even for women. I can also very honestly say in all my years of working with men, and I've worked with a lot of men over the years, I was in a male-dominated industry for a long time, and I worked with a lot of guys of a lot of different attractiveness levels, height, you know, body size, age, social skills. Like in all my years of dealing with men over the years, like I've never met a man who couldn't actually get a woman or get what he wanted in life solely because he wasn't attractive enough or because he wasn't tall enough. I've known short men who could get lots of women. I've known tall men who didn't do very well with women. I've known guys who were very classically handsome who, upon talking to them, were like complete turnoffs. I've known guys who were really not very attractive who were just like really great to be around and were actually became so much more attractive as you got to know them. If you're a guy and you're not model handsome, that's not like some kind of a death sentence when it comes to your social life or your social interactions. In fact, I actually saw a thing on social media recently where this guy who's actually very attractive had posted like some picture of himself and was just like I'm on dating apps and I can't find a date and I can't believe I can't find a date. And the number of women who were basically like, you're hot, there must be something wrong with you. There are very attractive men in the world that can't actually get women to date them, and it's probably because there's something wrong with their personality. This is one of the things that I don't think that men fully get when it comes to like male-female interaction, right? Because yes, women will often find men less creepy if they're physically attracted to them, but that will only take you so far. Like it might get you in the door, but just having physical attractiveness is never gonna fully win over a woman. A man's gonna have to come with more. And women don't prioritize physical appearance in men nearly as much as men prioritize physical appearance in women. Women can absolutely like grow to become more attracted to a guy. Now, some women are just gonna shut it down if they're really unattracted to you, which like I said, just move on. It's just not for you. But women will become more attracted to a man if he's not necessarily like the hottest guy in the room by his personality or, you know, maybe his humor or something. Like there's other ways that men can win over a woman that isn't just based on his physical appearance. I think a lot of men don't want to accept that because, and I notice it's interesting because there's a lot of guys that will shame women for like, women will have all these standards and then they'll be physically attracted to a guy and then they'll throw those standards out the window and be like, oh, but I'm physically attracted to him, so I'll throw away all my standards and stuff. And I'm not saying that women don't do that. Women do that. Don't advise women to do that, but women will do that. But men are so much more likely to do that. Like so much more likely to do that. Men will have all this criteria of things that they want in a woman, and they will be sexually attracted to a woman, and all those things that they say they want just get thrown out the window. And men will actually get into relationships. Men will even marry women that they are physically attracted to, and they don't even like that woman. I ended up in divorce court because of that. Because I woke up and realized like my husband, while I fit his physical standard of beauty, my husband does not like me. He does not like who I am as a person. And yes, I should have paid attention to that sooner. I should have seen the warning signs sooner. I will take full responsibility for that. But that said, men will literally be in long-term relationships. They will even marry a woman that they are physically attracted to, but they don't even like. as a person because they don't pay attention to them. And I think this goes into a lot of the stuff I've talked about with things like porn addiction and things like that. A lot of men just don't even humanize the woman that they're with. Whereas for women, it's really hard for us to not humanize men. Like, I'm not saying that there aren't women out there who don't dehumanize men, but like, generally speaking, most women are gonna have a really hard time not humanizing a man. While yes, there are women out there who will throw away their standards and things like that for a man that they're attracted to, and I don't advise women to do that. Physical attractiveness is not the only reason women will do that. Sometimes it's maybe she's really into his personality, or sometimes it's, you know, maybe he has a lot of money or status or something, and it's just sort of like, well, all those other things that I wanted, I'm just gonna ignore the red flags in a guy that they happen to be attracted to. But it typically won't be just for physical attraction, whereas men will do it just for physical attraction. And because men will do that, I think men often project that onto women and assume that women will do that if they're physically attracted to a guy. And I think oftentimes men think that physical attraction is so much higher a priority for women because physical attraction is such a high priority for men. When for women, physical attraction it's not nothing, but most of the time it's not gonna completely win a woman over. Men are gonna have to show up with more, and oftentimes with men, they'll be attracted to the woman physically, they'll throw away all their other criteria, and then they'll just complain about the fact that she doesn't have that criteria. They may even try to change her, things like that, but like, I think men oftentimes project that onto women when it's not the same for men and women. I'm not saying that women don't prioritize attractiveness, but like, it's never going to be as high a priority on their list as it is for men. I talked more about female pretty privilege and stuff in other videos where I dive into that, where like, there are privileges to being more attractive and there are downfalls to being more attractive when it comes to women. Like I said, if you are a very attractive woman, a lot of men will date you just because of your attractiveness and they won't even like you as a person. They may not even see you as a person. It's less of that situation when it comes to men who are attractive. For most men, it's not going to be able to get them very far in life. It might get them a little bit more attention. They might get away with a few more things, but it's probably not going to get them that far because, you know, if a man is like just attractive but he's not very smart, or like he's not very successful, he's not very bright or something like that, I mean, other men are probably not going to respect him that much. And women are probably not really going to be able to respect him. They might sleep with him. They might even get into a relationship with him, but those relationships are probably not going to work out because he's not really going to feel like a stable man because he's just going to be something nice to look at. You know, women are going to prioritize a lot more than just physical appearance when it comes to someone they're dating. I think men should prioritize more than physical appearance when it comes to the woman that they're dating. But unfortunately, with the way our society is right now, too many men don't do that. And I wouldn't advise women to do that either, to just date somebody that they're only physically attracted to. I want to make a note about men and height because I think that this is something that gets really convoluted because again, I've known a lot of guys of various heights and some guys who are very short, and I know some guys who are very short who got a lot of women, and I know some guys who are taller couldn't make it work with women, and I've known the reverse too. I've never in my life met a guy who thought that height was the reason he couldn't get a woman, that upon getting to know him, it didn't become painfully obvious that height was not the reason why he didn't do well with women. There was usually some other reason, but it's easy for men to then default to, well, it must be my height, because men can't do anything about their height. Like, men have no control over how tall they are. That is, their height is their height, right? So it deflects responsibility off of who they are as a person or their accomplishments or their personality or, you know, any kind of self-awareness or anything, because it's like, well, it's this thing that I have no control over that is the reason I can't get anywhere in life. It's a deflection. And it's not true because, again, I've known a lot of guys who were shorter who did very well with women because, you know, maybe they had game, or maybe they just had really great personalities, or, you know, maybe they were just really handsome. I've known a lot of really good looking guys that were on the shorter side, you know, and some really tall guys who were less attractive. I mean, you know, it varies. I think when men start saying things like, well, it's just it's my height, or even if it's just sort of their genetics when it comes to their build, like if they're, you know, a leaner guy that doesn't have as much muscles, it's like, well, it's because I don't have muscles, that's why women don't like me. It's probably not it. It's probably not it at all. I know it can be really easy to sink into that because at the end of the day, like, you don't actually have to look at things in your life that you can change because you're just defaulting to, oh, just because I'm short. And I'm gonna let guys in on a little secret when it comes to women. Do women tend to prefer taller men than shorter men? Yes. However, women don't prioritize men's height nearly as much as men think that women prioritize men's height. Not saying women don't prioritize it, but men believe that women put so much more priority on men's height than women actually do. In the course of my lifetime, I've known a lot of women that had very, very extreme criteria when it came to men's height. And every single situation, height was the first thing that a woman compromised on. I know women that I wouldn't date a guy under 6'5", wouldn't date a guy under 6'5", ends up with a guy who's 6 feet and is totally in love with him and thinks he's the greatest thing in the world. Women will meet a guy that they care about, or meet a guy that they're into, or meet a guy that has the other criteria, and height will be the first thing that they'll throw out the window. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that women are gonna necessarily go for a guy who's like a lot shorter than them, because there is a biological factor that happens where as a woman you tend to want a man who is larger in size than you. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, I know some of it is biological because you want a man who you feel like can protect you. There's also a lot of societal stuff because as women we get shamed a lot for our body size. A lot of women who aren't like teeny tiny petite girls end up feeling a lot of guilt and shame for not being a teeny tiny petite girl. There's a lot of aspects to that of as a woman, like if you are with a guy who's like who's shorter than you or skinnier than you or something like that, like it brings up a lot of body shame in women, and that's not on the guy. But if you are a guy and a woman is rejecting you because of your, you know, your body size or your height, she's probably just not the woman for you, and it probably has more to do with her own insecurities. I mean, like, I wouldn't date a guy who was shorter than me, and that's not to say that guys who are shorter than me, like, there's anything wrong with them or there's anything bad about being short. It's just, it would make me feel very uncomfortable to date a guy who is shorter than me. Now, luckily, I'm a pretty average height as a woman, and I would date a guy who was pretty close to my height. I haven't really dated guys who are super tall. The average height of the guys that I've dated have been like between like, say, like 5'8" and 5'10", which is actually like the average height for a man. 5'10" is actually, most men in the world are going to be about 5'10". That's sort of average height for males. I will say, I mean, I'm 5'6", and I have gone out on a couple dates with guys who were like really tall, and I've always found it weird. I mean, I went out with a guy who's maybe like 6'5" or so. It was just one date. It was a really awkward date and stuff, and I remember it was a really casual like date that we were going on, and I remember thinking like, I knew how tall he was because we'd met like online dating and stuff like that. And heels would not have been appropriate. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm actually going out with a guy, like the tallest guy I've ever gone out with. I'm like, I can't wear heels because of where we're going, but like it was what it was. So I'm wearing like flat shoes. If we had really hit it off and things had gone well, I mean, you know, I would have looked past the height thing because it wasn't that big a deal. But I will admit, like, I did find the height difference to be weird. Like it was uncomfortable. And like, I'm like 5'6", so I'm not a short woman, and so I find like girls who are like, I'm 5'1", but I won't date a guy who's under 6'4", and I'm like, what do you need that height for? Like, is that not weird? I mean, I don't know. I would just find that uncomfortable. And again, if I met a guy who was like 6'5" and we really hit it off and things were great, like I'd look past the height difference, but like I don't actively seek that out. It's kind of uncomfortable, not quite as uncomfortable as like dating somebody who's a lot shorter than me, but like I still, you know, again, I know for me, like I would never date a guy just because he had height. Like, height's nice to have, but it's like, okay, you're tall, like what else do you have? And I've actually had people try to set me up on dates with guys. I remember having a conversation one time with this girl who was like, she was like, oh my god, I want to set you up with my friend's brother. You would totally love him, you totally hit it off. And I was like, well, what about him would make us hit it off? And she's like, he's really tall. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, well, is he rich? And she was like, no. I was like, well, then I'm not interested. And she's like, isn't that kind of shallow? And I'm like, isn't that just as shallow as you trying to fix me up with somebody just because he's tall? I would take short and rich over tall and broke any day personally, but that's just me. I know this is a trend and I know it's cute, but like I'm looking for a guy in finance, trust fund, blue eyes, 6'5" or something like that. I forget the order that it goes in. For any guys out there that are listening to this and thinking that that's what every woman wants, like it's trendy, it's cute right now. Are there a lot of women out there that are very attracted to guys maybe that fit that criteria? Yes, but like not every woman in the world is looking for those things. Some women are, some women aren't. Like I said, with height, like I think height is a very personal preference, and I mean 6'5" is a really small amount of guys in the population. If you as a woman want to date a guy who's 6'5" and over, more power to you. Personally, I think that's a lot of extra height. And, you know, if he's a really great guy, wonderful, but like, I think it seems excessive, but whatever. If I met a really phenomenal guy and he was 6'5", great, but like, I would never date a guy just because he was 6'5". That just wouldn't interest me. And I've nothing against blue eyes at all. I mean, I have blue eyes, and I think blue eyes can look very attractive, but like, I find it weird when people are like obsessed with the eye color of the person that they're dating. No judgment if you are, like, you want what you want. I just think there's so many other things in life that are a priority that it's like, is eye color really that important? If it is to you, fine. I just think that's a little strange. And this is coming from somebody who has blue eyes. So, you know, if a guy has blue eyes or if he doesn't, I don't really care. The trust fund thing, and I've seen other women online talk about this. So a trust fund is, I mean, it's nice for a guy to have a trust fund. It probably means his family comes from money. And so like there's some signs there that he might have like some old money qualities if that's what you're into. I personally don't love the idea of a man having money that he hasn't earned, because oftentimes that, particularly with men, can put men in a very sort of like spoiled feminine mentality. So like if a guy has a trust fund, wonderful, but like if a guy's only relying on the trust fund, I think that's a red flag. You know, if a man doesn't actually have like a passion and purpose in life where he's actually like driven and, you know, stuff like that, I think him just having a trust fund and living off a trust fund, I think that's a red flag. If he has one and it's just kind of like a safety net thing, or he has one and it's just kind of like for the future, retirement or something like that, whatever, I mean, that's fine. I don't know, I feel like glamorizing a guy with a trust fund is like kind of like, I've also too, and this has just been my observation, I haven't really dated like old money guys per se, but I have been around some old money guys from like work environments that I've been in and stuff. I've always found that they make me very nervous. I always feel very uncomfortable because my experience, and I think a lot of this is with like younger guys, but like guys that have that kind of like old money frat bro mentality, I always find they have this air about them of like carelessness, of like, daddy can get me out of anything, so I don't feel a need to be responsible and stuff like that. I don't want to say that's universal, but I have noticed that. And maybe it's because I actually used to work very frequently when I did stand up. I used to work at a comedy club that was just above a bar that was in like Harvard Square, right across from Harvard Law School. So we had a lot of like Harvard Law School students. So you have a lot of guys with like the sweaters knotted around that look like they just came from like their yachting club or something like that or whatever. And like they would usually be drunk. So I suppose when you're like a drunk guy, you kind of always feel a little unstable, but that was just my observation from that. And then the whole thing about a guy in finance, if you want a guy in finance, go for it. I was married to a guy in finance. He wasn't a wealthy guy in finance, but he was in the finance industry. Guys in finance can make a pretty wide range of money. So my guess is if you're looking for like the finance guy with the trust fund and everything, you're looking for like a guy who makes a lot of money in finance. And if that's what you're into and that's what you want to date, that's fine. But I wouldn't like glamorize the idea of a guy in finance as like, first of all, automatically making a lot of money. Because not every guy in finance makes a ton of money. And I know I've heard arguments of people like, well, if you work in finance, you're probably working for other people. So there's like a salary cap. It's different than like, say, like an entrepreneur or something where like there's an unlimited amount of money to be made. You know, whatever you're attracted to as far as like a career or whatever or something like that. Like I know a lot of women are into like corporate guys. Some women are into blue collar guys, like, you know, whatever you're into, whatever. I would advise women, and I've said this before in other videos, but I just think this is so important. I want to hammer this home. If you're looking for a man to be a provider, you have to make sure that he doesn't only have the means to provide for you, but he has the desire to be a provider. So I would be really hesitant to put like finance guys up on a pedestal, because like even if he is a finance guy and he makes a lot of money and everything, great if he has the means to, you know, take care of you, but you want to make sure that he has the desire to be a provider. Because just like if you just find a guy in finance, or you just find a guy that makes a lot of money or has a lot of money or has a trust fund or something, that doesn't mean that he has a provider mentality. And if you were looking for a provider as a woman, you have to make sure that he has a provider mentality and not just the means. I had to learn that lesson the hard way. So I know this video was kind of all over the map. I was talking to guys, I was talking to women, I was whatever. I was getting into the idea of pretty privilege in men, which again, I do think that pretty privilege is a double-edged sword in both men and women. I do think that it's more relevant for women because we put more emphasis on women's appearance than we put on men's appearance. But I don't want guys to fall into this victimization of like, oh, if I'm not like classically handsome, or if I don't look like, you know, a Marvel superhero, that I'm just like doomed. I always go back to the film 300. I have a breakdown of this, of like King Leonidas. Like, is Gerard Butler as, you know, King Leonidas in 300, like, is he very classically handsome? Is he the epitome of masculinity? Like, did he get his body in sort of this supreme physical shape and stuff? Yes. But a man embodying King Leonidas energy, but looking like he's got a few extra pounds on him and not being like completely lean and cut and not having the perfect six-pack abs and stuff, is that still incredibly attractive to women? Yeah. And in fact, I would actually argue that a man who embodies that, say, like King Leonidas energy, that may not be like a cut bodybuilder and stuff, is more attractive to a woman than a man who might have that like cut physical physique, but kind of be passive or kind of be an egomaniac or kind of be an asshole or something like that. Like, it's gonna be way more attractive to women if you embody that, like, that energy of that kind of like king-like masculinity, like true masculine energy, like healthy masculine energy. And I have videos talking about healthy masculine energy, but like embodying that at like any body shape, way more attractive than a guy having like some kind of like perfect physique but actually kind of not really fully embodying his like true healthy masculine energy. The embodiment of healthy masculine energy is gonna trump everything, absolutely. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. I know it's kind of all over the place and stuff, but I just thought these were some important topics to talk about. They're getting very popular in social media. So yeah, if you like this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up. Be sure you subscribe to my channel. The engagement on the video helps. It helps boost the video and the algorithm so more people can get this message. Any thoughts on this topic or any other topic suggestions, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I love to hear from you and I love your video suggestions. If you are a woman who'd like to check out my Dark Feminine Energy Guided Journal, available on Amazon, the link is in the description box below, along with links to my course and master classes and all my social media accounts. So be sure you check that out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.